Good morning. Across from me is the Atlantic Ocean, and we're here on the most easterly point of the North American continent. This is also the place where Canada welcomes the sunrise every morning. This is Cape Spear on the island of Newfoundland, and it's the official starting point of my trip across Canada. Let's take a look at this view. Well, not too much of a view right now because the fog is in the air, but it's just after 5 in the morning and the sun has risen. So I grew up here in Canada, but I've spent the past few decades living abroad. And in that time, Canada has changed. In some ways for the good.
News this noon, Canada has legalized recreational marijuana.
In some ways for the not so good.
Journal says Burger King is in talks to buy Tim Hortons, the Canadian coffee and donut giant.
And that's the foghorn in the distance. So I've returned home to spend the summer rediscovering Canada. And it's a fitting start here, all the way on the East Coast, to begin my journey. So join me on the great Canadian road trip. The fog has engulfed the whole area of Cape Spear, and I was here yesterday scouting out the location a bit, and it was much sunnier and much warmer than this right now. Let's check out some other places in here. What is that? This is the original Cape Spear lighthouse, which was built in 1836, and the purpose was to guide ships safely to St. John's Harbor, which is just north of here along the coast. Cape Spears is also a National Historic Site, and like all sites and parks around the country, you could find the famous red chairs, which were first set up in 2014. I'm all alone here at this place. It does not open until 10 a.m., so it's still quite early in the morning, but it's kind of cool to be here all alone. It has a spooky vibe to it though. The fog seems to be dissipating a little bit. The horn continues on. Check out this. So it's closed right now because it's, again, still early in the morning, but I went in yesterday to check it out and it was pretty awesome. Ooh. So during World War II, Cape Spear began to serve a secondary purpose. Canadian troops were stationed here where they manned two massive 10-meter long, 30-ton armory guns positioned on the coast here to defend the shoreline from the Germans, German submarines and U-boats. Maybe that's the same thing. All right, the wind and the fog is picking back up, and I think it's time to head back to St. John's. So, all right, let's get to that car. All right. So this is the official starting point of my route, but it took me a bit of an effort to get to this point in the first place. 3 days ago, I flew in to Moncton from Vancouver with a brief stopover in Montreal. The flight over was pretty awesome because I got to see Canada's amazing landscapes from the sky, beginning with the Rocky Mountains, going into the prairies, and the Canadian Shield. After picking up my car in Moncton, I drove to a hotel in a place called Sackville, New Brunswick for the night. Charming little place. And the next morning, I drove straight to North Sydney to catch the ferry to Newfoundland. The overnight ferry was pleasant, and I arrived in Newfoundland early in the morning yesterday. And so yesterday I drove to this part of the island, Cape Spear, to just check it out first, and St. John's as well, and that's where we're headed next. So let's check out the city of St. John's. And the drive this way is pretty awesome. So I'm driving in the downtown core right now, and it's not a huge downtown, but it's a little bit bigger than I expected. Another takeaway from the city is it's a lot nicer than I thought it would be. No disrespect to the people living here, but I thought it was some little outpost on the far end of the Canadian Empire. But St. John's is actually quite nice, and there's a nice feeling to the town, and there's some beautiful homes that I've seen driving and walking around here as well. Let's see more of this downtown. So this is Water Street, which is one of the main drives down the downtown area. And what I find interesting about St. John's downtown is there's not too many commercial stores. Like there's a Tim Hortons down the road a little bit, and there's a lot of just kind of unique and more independent stores in this part of town, the downtown of St. John's. Healing Tree, kombucha place, and down over that area is a place called George Street, which has a really nice collection of bars and restaurants, and that's where I'm going to be headed tonight for my last evening drink and meal in the city. It's charming and it's quaint. It's a nice walkable downtown area, and it feels safe, and the people seem friendly. There's a few homeless people about, but not overwhelming, just randomly, and overall a solid downtown, so respect to St. John's. Here we have St. John's Harbor, which is a fantastic natural harbor as these narrow waters here jet out into the Atlantic. In the past, the harbor served originally just to support primarily the cod fishing industry, but after that dissipated over the years, it mainly serves container ships coming in and out of the city. We'll come back to this downtown area a little bit later tonight for dinner and drinks, but
700 meters. Turn left onto Temperance Street.
I need a coffee first, so we're gonna grab a cup of coffee, check out an interesting monument, and check out another National Historic Site in Canada. Keep my eyes on the road. These cookies are tempting. And wow. That coffee looks nice.
Like they were like long enough ago that they just didn't. They just kind of had this like blanket.
Just cappuccino and oh, that's really nice. That's fantastic, especially on a rainy day like today.
Excuse me. All right, I'd give that coffee a good 9 out of 10, the Battery Cafe. But that's not the main reason I came to this neighborhood. The main reason I came here is to check out the Terry Fox Monument. Now, this trip across Canada, we're going to touch on some of the milestones and some of the famous people and places of this country. And I think Terry Fox stands amongst one of the most important people in this country. Terry was born in 1958 in Winnipeg, Canada. At the age of 18, he was diagnosed with cancer. So in April of 1980, he decided to take on the great endeavor of running across Canada with the goal of raising $1 for every Canadian at the time, which was 24 million people. And the beginning of his journey was here in St. John's, Newfoundland. Here's the statue here. Now, throughout this trip, we're gonna stop at a few different points related to Terry. Unfortunately, Terry did not make his journey across Canada. He had to cut it short almost halfway through near Lake Superior area of Ontario. We're going to visit that site in about a month's time, and I just wanted to come here to pay respect to Terry, who I think is one of Canada's greatest national heroes. All right, so next up we're going to drive up to the Signal Hill part of St. John's, which is the highest point in the city. So looking forward to the epic views we're going to see up here, and it's a National Historic Site as well, with quite a few incredible things related to history overall, which we're going to experience. It could be walkable, but it's nice to have the car right now. The approach coming here is pretty remarkable. So directly ahead there is Signal Hill. And we're gonna make our way up there to get some, hopefully pretty awesome views of the city of St. John's. And here we have the visitor center of Signal Hill. And we have the great Canadian flag in the distance, along with the, yikes. Hi there. So it seems Signal Hill was fought over several times, primarily between the British, we have the redcoats over here, and then the French. And these are some of the battery guns that were stationed around Signal Hill to protect the area as well. All right, that was a nice little spot. But my main mission here is to get up to that big hill on the top there. Yeah, definitely glad I made it up here for the view. So back in December of 1901, Guglielmo Marconi received the first ever transatlantic signal . And the message he received was just the letter S done in Morse code. And this structure here is known as Cabot Tower, named after John Cabot, who was one of the first explorers of this region. And we'll talk more about him at a later point in this trip. Quite a nice structure. Let's go inside and see what it looks like. A pretty amazing view of St. John's from atop Cabot Tower. It's interesting here how the fine for feeding wildlife is $390. How did they arrive at $390? I mean, $400 flat seems good. $350 kind of makes sense as well, but $390, interesting. And afterwards, the next spot we're gonna head to is a place with a really interesting name called Kitty Vitty. And I'm gonna have a beer there. So I believe the Kitty Vitty is located in this area straight ahead of us.